Hi, this is Angela G. from No Longer Lukewarm for Red Hot Christians and Wannabes. These videos are for those of you who like to listen while you may be doing something else. For those of you who like to read my blogs, you can find that link in the description box below. So this one is called When You Pray Believing, You Will Receive. There's an old saying that goes something like, if you're praying for rain, you better bring an umbrella. It means that we should always pray believing that we will receive what we're praying for. But believing with your head is one thing. Believing with your life is quite another. Recently, God convicted me of praying prayers and then acting as if I didn't believe He would answer. He showed me how fervently I prayed and yet how I was still gripped by uncertainty in that area. The Bible calls it being double-minded. It was an eye-opening experience and one that made me take an inventory of just exactly what I was praying and how I was living in light of my prayers. Set time for prayers. Psalm 55, verse 17. Evening and morning and noon will I pray and cry aloud, and He shall hear my voice. People are creatures of habit. 1 Thessalonians 5:16 tells us to pray without ceasing, but it's both biblical and helpful to carve out specific times in our day when we allow nothing else into our minds but attention to God. Every person is different, though, and every child of God has a specific walk based on his or her position and calling in the kingdom. Some are called to pray more than others, but we're all expected to commune with our Father every single day. For me, I pray fasting prayers between 3 and 6 a.m., morning prayers in the shower, drive time prayers in the morning and afternoon on work days, and evening prayers. The prayer that God was convicting me about was my morning drive time prayer. That's the time when I always pray on the armor of God. I take time with each piece to ask God to help me in those areas. Truth and protection from deception, aligning my will to His, walking as a witness, faith and help with unbelief, and keeping my thoughts aright. At the end, I finish with specific Bible verses that are statements of my belief and requests for things I desire that God will do for me in my life. My prayers in question. James 1, verses 6 to 8. But let him ask in faith, nothing wavering. For he that wavereth is like a wave of the sea, driven with the wind and tossed. For let not that man think he shall receive anything of the Lord. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. Here are the verses I was praying that God called me out for. Psalm 139, verses 23 to 24. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there be any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. Psalm 5, verses 7 to 8. But I, by your great love, can come into your house. In reverence I bow down toward your holy temple. Lead me, Lord, in your righteousness because of my enemies. Make your ways straight before me. Psalm 119, verses 132 to 133. Look thou upon me, and be merciful unto me, as thou usest to do unto those that love thy name. Order my steps in thy word, and let not any iniquity have dominion over me. Virtually every single day, I pray 3 different scriptures for God to lead me, but I was still having trouble stepping forward in faith. I would feel a prompting to do something, and then I would question it. Was that God speaking, or was that my own thoughts? Should I do it or not do it? Insert worry here. When God brought the situation to my attention, I determined that I was going to decide immediately whose voice I was hearing and move forward based on that. After all, if I'm praying for God to lead me, I must believe that God will do it. I just have to trust Him to make His voice clear to me every time. My right track testimony. And the Lord let me know I was on the right track. My Sunday morning ministry is called Taste of Church to You. I make up a set of about 30 snacks with Bible verses and messages in English and Spanish. I take them first to the men who wait for day jobs. Then I go to a convenience store and a laundromat. Those are all on the way to my church. It's a taste because it's something to eat and because it's just a little message from church on a Sunday morning. This past Sunday, when I finished passing out snacks at the mostly empty laundromat, I still had several brownies with messages in my basket. As I stopped at the next light, I looked ahead to the Waffle House parking lot on the other side of the street. It was a family taking a minute to get a handicapped man into a van. I felt the prompting to stop and give the family the snacks. Confirmation, I heard him correctly. Now, the Lord gave me this evangelism ministry about 3 years ago, so I'm used to going to the 3 places I always go. Stopping at an additional location and catching people in the parking lot was a step even further out of my comfort zone. But I had the definite feeling that it was the Lord prompting me to stop. He has really been working on me with boldness in that area. You can read about that here in a blog entitled, Even When We Aren't, God is Able. I made a conscious effort not to question it and pulled in to give the snacks to the family. When I was done, I saw there was also a group of people talking just outside the door of the restaurant. I counted the number of people and the number of brownies and thought I had just enough. But when I started handing them out, I found that I was one short. And the second to last lady said, "I'm keto." That means she doesn't eat sugar. It turned out I had exactly the right number. I believe God was letting me know that I heard him correctly and I did the right thing by moving forward in faith. God is sovereign. Now, don't get me wrong, though. God has his own purposes and timing, and we can't just get whatever we want because we believe that God will give it to us. Belief doesn't answer prayers. God does. And he obviously isn't going to say yes to every request. We can't, for example, pray to win the lottery and then quit our jobs in expectation of taking home millions of dollars. Likewise, when we don't get what we pray for, it isn't necessarily that we don't have the faith to receive it. Sometimes God says yes, sometimes it's no, and sometimes it's wait. In fact, taking belief to the extreme is one of the very dangerous end-time deceptions. There's something called the Word of Faith movement that would seek to decree and declare things into existence. Leader Kenneth Hagin once said, "You can have whatever you say. You always get in your life what you believe for and what you say." For example, someone might say, "I decree and declare God's blessings on this road trip, that my car will remain mechanically sound for the duration of the trip." But that isn't a prayer at all. In fact, it's more like an end run around God. Plus, there are a lot of similarities to a magical incantation. If you want more information about this movement or why it isn't biblical, Got Questions has a great article on it, and I'll put that link in the box. God does, however, promise to answer every prayer prayed in his will. 1 John 5, verses 14 to 15 says, "And this is the confidence that we have in him, that if we ask anything according to his will, he heareth us. And we know that if he hear us, whatsoever we ask, we know that we have the petitions that we desired of him." When we ask for things that we know he wants for us, such as prayers prayed straight from the Bible like the verses above, we can be sure that he will answer when we believe. The Bible is clear. Pray believing. Matthew 21:22, "And all things whatsoever ye shall ask in prayer, believing, ye shall receive." Mark 11:24, "Therefore I say unto you, what things soever ye desire, when ye pray, believe that ye receive them, and ye shall have them." Until the day when we meet the Lord face to face, we must continue to pray believing. Hebrews 11:6 says, "But without faith it is impossible to please him. For he that cometh to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him." When we seek the Lord, pray in his will, and believe that we have our petitions, we can step out in faith to receive the reward of our prayers. And the bottom of my blog this week, I put a selection of other blogs that I have written. So in the past 4 years, since the Lord has given me this blog, I've written several blogs about prayer. So there's a list you can skim to see if any might appeal to you. And again, that link is in the box.